special case in the battle of the rooks versus the queen is one of those in which one of the sides is having opposite colored bishops on the board. Then everything depends on the initiative. The side which is attacking first is usually winning, like it is here in this game. Van den Linde, Paul against Solodovnichenko. Solodovnichenko, an experienced grandmaster from Ukraine, is converting his advantage rather easily. First of all, he goes rook d4, not only to attack the pawns on the queen side, but also to prepare the doubling of the rooks and then to penetrate with the rooks on the first and the second rank. This is a very typical plan, not only in these endgames, but in many other endgames in which we have the rooks. The rooks are enjoying the second ranks because from there they can attack the pawns from behind, and there are a lot of enemy pawns on the second rank as well, plus they can create mating threats like it is here also. This is the case. Queen b3, rook f to d8. This rook is coming into the action, and together the rooks are going to get into the second or the first rank. What white could think about was to advance the pawns further and to try to create some counter chances. Eventually, if he can manage to create a pass pawn, that would be great for him, or eventually if he can attack the pawn on b7. But unfortunately for him, there is no time for that. After rook d2, black is already creating threats. One is rook b2 followed by rook d to d2, doubling the rooks, and after that this bishop will come on d4, and that will be the end of the pawn on h2, and most likely the end of the white king, as after that rook to h2 would be coming, checkmate or back rank checkmates. White tried to defend with queen e3, which is a tactical oversight, but of course there was nothing much for him to do. For instance, if he tries queen b4 and then to defend the pawn like that with queen to f4, we'll say first to move like queen c4, then black has a choice how to win. One is to attack immediately the pawn on f2, and after queen f4, know that he is not taking this pawn, as after that we will have an opposite colored bishop endgame, which would be a draw. Even though black is a pawn ahead, this doesn't really matter. White is playing a6, and then the bishop will come to defend the pawns. That's a very easy draw. We shouldn't trade our active pieces in situations like that. They're worth more than the queen in this particular case, as they're attacking the king. But instead of that, we need to try and to bring this bishop in the action. Say, for example, we can do it like that with bishop d4, and after bishop b2, this time we can take on f2, and the two rooks on the second rank, like we said, are creating plenty of threats. One of them is to give checkmate on the first rank, and if this is not working, okay, they can easily switch the targets and go for the pawns like it is in this line. The pawns would be hanging and they would be lost one by one. In that line, instead of placing the rook on the second rank, it was even easier to first place it on the first rank, to force this king to step on g2, as the threat was rook b1 and to grab the bishop for free. Okay, in this case we can trade the two rooks for the queen, if we take the bishop, of course. And after king g2, then this time rook d to d2 is even more effective than before. Queen f4, g5 for instance, and the bishop is coming on d4, and the pawn on f2 is undefendable. As you can see, the attack is conducted on the dark squares all the time. Black was placing his pieces on the dark squares in order to exclude the white bishop from the defense, and that's the end of the story for white. Well, back to the game where queen e3 was played. Queen e3 is allowing the immediate rook takes f2. Naturally, white cannot take it because of bishop d4 skewer all the time, so he took instead of that the pawn on a7, but then rook e2, queen takes b7. The pawns are no longer important on the queen side, as there is checkmate coming on the other side of the board. The threat is bishop d4 check, followed by rook takes f1 checkmate. I defended that with queen f3, bishop d4 check, king h1, rook d to d2, and there is another threat, rook h2 checkmate. The only way to save it is bishop g2, hoping that black will take on g2 with the rooks. Even though he's winning in that case, he found a better way. He first took that pawn. He knows that his opponent has nowhere to go, and after this check, white resigned. He's losing more material, and there is nothing to play for.